I want to congratulate you and We the World on the 20th anniversary of 11 days of global unity. Together, you, me, and we can create a better world and have fun doing it.
Thank you, Dr. Jane Goodell, for helping We the World and all our partners to celebrate over 20 years of 11 days of global unity. And thank you for joining us. Welcome to the 11 days of global unity. My name is Birgit Ben-Eli, and I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement and International Outreach for We the World. Today, I'm excited that we will be joined by Amory Thomas-Brown and Amanda Waring, who will be talking about health, the fifth theme of the 11 days of global unity. For the full 11-day schedule, you can register for free by joining 11daysofglobalunity.org. That's the numeral 11. There you will find access to all the 11 days broadcast. You can also visit we.net to take action with the 11 campaigns for change, subscribe to Trans Magazine, and you can support this global work by contributing at we.net/donate. A heartfelt thank you to all of you who make this possible. Before we bring in our speakers, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge some of our incredible partners who we support and collaborate with during the 11 days of global unity and throughout the year. The UN International Day of Peace NGO Committee, Peace Day Philly, the Unite for Peace Coalition, including Unity Earth, the Sign Network, One World, and Hubcast Media, the Awakening World, We the World, May Peace Prevail on Earth International, United Religions Initiative, Pathways to Peace, Global Silent Minute, Children of the Earth, Climate Week, the Peace Lab and Peacemakers Circle Network, the Deep and Rapid Transformation Convergence, Good News Broadcast in Times Square, and Pace e Bene Nonviolence Campaign. Together, these groups represent millions of people working to achieve global unity and peace. This movement is a living example of what becomes possible when we act from interdependence, compassion, and shared purpose, all working with We the World and the campaign at we.net. Now let's bring in our guests, Amanda Waring and Amory Thomas-Brown.
Hello.
Hello. Let me introduce the two of you. Welcome, welcome. I'm very happy to have you here. Amory Thomas-Brown is a healer, writer, and spiritual guide dedicated to peace, unity, and love. Based in Atlanta, Georgia. I meant to ask you, actually, when you shared the countries you visited, it was also where you practiced, because you mentioned a lot of countries. So you shared your work in the Americas, Middle East, Africa, and the Caribbean. Author of The Reformation of a Nation, the United State of Remembrance. Amory weaves together breath, presence, and cultural wisdom in their practice as a speaker, doula, Reiki practitioner, and caregiver. Amanda Waring is an internationally acclaimed performer, filmmaker, poet, and inspirational speaker whose life's work bridges the arts and healing, a compassionate advocate for the elder care, dignity, and compassion. To her award-winning films, books, music, and sacred ceremonies, Amanda weaves creativity with advocacy, offering powerful messages of hope, resilience, and personal healing. Her work uplifts women, communities, and caregivers worldwide, reminding us of the profound dignity and compassion at the heart of our shared humanity. So welcome, both of you, and welcome to this important conversation on caring for dying and ourselves. Together we will explore how unity, interdependence, health, and women's wisdom, freedom, and peace guide us in facing one's life's most profound transitions. This session is more than an end-of-life care, as it's about honoring dignity, nurturing caregivers, and finding emotional, spiritual, and creative practices that sustain us all. By listening, sharing, and reflecting, we open pathways to healing that embrace both the dying and the living. I'd like to give the first speaker, Amanda. I would like to invite you to present and hear what you have to share with our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. And yes, caring for the dying and caring for ourselves. So In my history, my granny was a very wise woman, and she used to take me to go and sing to the dying at the Royal Hospital and Home for Incurables. And for many, many years, I have sat with those that are passing through their transitions. And also, my mother, when she was dying of leukemia at the age of 17, the way she had been treated in a certain hospital shocked me to the core. It was as if she was invisible, with demoralized staff barely even making eye contact with her. There was no connection, no interaction. And my mum said she felt like a caged animal. And to see such a vital woman as my mum was crushed by this experience made me determined to change hospitals as fast as I possibly could. Stood in my doctor's doorway, had almost like a physical fight with him. I wouldn't let him go to a charity golf match unless he promised he'd move my mum to a hospital where I felt that she would be seen as an individual with her own history, her own rights. We made the right decision. The staff in the next hospital were friendly and communicative, and Mama's spirits rose. And you can have good medical care, but without adequate emotional care, dignified care, healing is impaired. And not only that, healing is actually, they've proven this. If you treat somebody and diminish them at the end of life or at any time, the blood count goes down. So why is dignity in care and compassion in care so important? Because you can cause harm by your lack of care. But this goes hand in hand with the understanding that finishing the story with my mom was that when she died, she had a good death in the sense that she was cared for. And I've been a death doula since the age of, well, say really since 8, but professionally since 17 years old. I was one of the first funeral celebrants, taking funerals in this country, in the UK, at the age of 18. So death and dying have been woven in, but the important crux of the matter with my mum was, what can I do to share a personal story that hopefully will ignite a global movement on looking at how we care for the dying and how we care for ourselves whilst doing that. Because actually, most of the reasons between lack of care is down to burnout of staff, of relatives, is down to unexpressed emotions, is down to not being able to forgive or be forgiven. And at the end of a person's life, it's not going to be the medication they received or how clean the room was. Actually, it'll be that love that they have received that they will remember. So love in care is not a dirty word. In a professional capacity, this is my important message to the world. And also for me, with my mum's death, what I decided to do was to make a film in memory of her. I'd never made a film before. I'd been in many, but I never made an actual film. And I sold my flat in order to make this film. It's called What Do You See? And it takes you through the day in the life of an elderly woman who's had a stroke. And it's played by Virginia McKenna, who stars in Born Free. Amazing actress. And filmed this where my mum actually died, because I wanted to show people the experience of the impact of our thoughtlessness and careless behavior. It may not be deliberate abuse, but actually the ignoring aspect of not seeing the person inside, no matter what age they are, no matter what stage of dying. Remember that we are always living until we are dying. And even in our dying, we are living until we then pass on. And then beyond that, depending on your beliefs as well. So categorization doesn't necessarily help. Let's just look at care for all of us at all times. But the film that I made, I went to the Prime Minister of England, at the time Gordon Brown, and said we need to put dignity back at the heart of care. We need to bring in emotional intelligence. We need to bring in love. And so for the last sort of 27 years or more, I have been teaching, training, writing, speaking about around the world the need for the two aspects, caring for the dying and caring for ourselves, hand in hand. They are intertwined. I'm just going to read you something. I've written many books on care, so being a good carer at the heart of care. And I've made over 50 films on care, and I continue to teach people how to be soul midwives. But I would like to give you this as an option to just have something to think about, where your own prejudice perhaps may be. So in my training sessions and workshops, I like to retell the story of an American doctor, Paul Ruskin, who was giving a lecture to graduate nurses on the psychological aspects of aging. He told them the patient neither speaks nor comprehends the spoken word. Sometimes she babbles incoherently for hours on end. She is disorientated about person, place, and time. She does, however, respond to her own name. So I've worked with her for the past 6 months, but she still shows complete disregard for her physical appearance, and she makes no effort to assist in her own care. She must be fed, bathed, and clothed by others. And because she has no teeth, her food must be pureed. Her shirt is usually soiled from almost incessant drooling. She does not walk. Her sleep pattern is erratic. Often she wakes in the middle of the night, and her screaming awakens others. Most of the time she is friendly and happy, but several times a day she gets quite agitated without apparent cause, and then she wails until someone comes to comfort her. So I asked how the nurses would feel about taking care of such a patient, and they used such words as frustrated, hopeless, depressed, and annoyed. And when I said that I enjoyed it and thought that they would too, the class looked at me in disbelief. And then I passed around a picture of the patient, my 6-month-old daughter. So why is it so much more difficult to care for a 90-year-old than a 6-month-old with identical symptoms? A helpless baby may weigh 15 pounds and a helpless adult 100. But the answer goes deeper than this. The infant represents new life, hope, and almost infinite potential. The aged patient represents the end of life with little chance for growth in some aspects. So we need to change our perspective. Those who are ending their lives in the helplessness of old age deserve the same care and attention as those who are beginning their lives in the helplessness of infancy. And for me, all of us are now going to be called upon to care as we used to care for our elders. In my country, in the UK, there isn't enough social care. There isn't enough money. There isn't enough X, Y, and Z for the care that we needed. So we are going to have to find another way. And that means as a society talking about how can we nurture, care for, learn from those that are passing. And one of the ways that I suggest for all of us is that we place ourselves at the heart of our own care so that we can better care for others. And with that, I want to hand over to Anne-Marie. You need to unmute.
There I am.
Always. Amory, just give me a second. I just want to, you know what, actually I shouldn't, because it applies to both of you. The love and care that's already radiating from your words is just unbelievable. And you brought already so many thoughts up, but I think before we get into the conversation, I'd like to pass this on to Amory to add, and I'm sorry, I just cut in the middle. That wasn't my intention.
That's fine.
So Amory, please go ahead.
So when Amanda was, we have so many similarities. My mother was 69. She would have been 70 the year that she transitioned. And I had the honor of sitting with my mother for the last week of her life. I learned later, after the fact, that my mother was in the early stages of dementia. And there was a lot that was surrounding my mother's death that I didn't understand, but later learning that she had the beginning stages of dementia shed light a lot on what I was experiencing with my mother. And so my desire to help those that are experiencing dementia, and more specifically in the end stages of life, that ignoring piece is what stands out to me, is because my mother was kind of coherent sometimes and other times not. She tended to be shunned in the care facilities that she was in. And this is a woman who was a minister who spent her life caring for others, caring for her family, just very outgoing. So to be experiencing this shift in mindset and to have people who didn't know her deal with her based on her behavior at the end of her life it had to be dreadful for my mother. And so for the last week of my mother's life, my mother did not communicate with me at all. So after not seeing my mother for 2 years, and then to see and talk to her every day on the phone, and then to see her just so drastically take this turn was jarring for me. So all I could do was emotionally support my mother. I remember my mother saying to me, because she could see that I was just really troubled with what I was experiencing of her in person versus what I had experienced with her on the past 2 years on the phone, not seeing my mother. And so I was just trying to reconcile all what I was experiencing. And I remember my mother saying to me, I'm going to say some things that don't make sense, but I want you to remember that I told you this. So in the midst of all this, trying to understand what's going on with my mother, she then babbles and says something. And I look at her and I say, "What, Mom?" And she said, "I just told you. I just told you." So for me, although my mother may have been in the early stages of dementia, my mother was fully aware of what was going on. She knew that she was saying things that didn't make sense. And so I can only imagine, with her having that mindset of her really knowing what was going on and people dealing with her as if she did not know, just because she would babble these things out. It was a hard place for my mother. And I remember she was in this rehab facility. My mother transitioned on the 18th of January, MLK Day. And Christmas Day, she's in this rehab facility and she's crying. She's on the phone and she's crying. And I'm like, Mom, I know this can't be easy for you, because my mother was a very private person. She would much have rather been at home in her own space. And here she was on Christmas Day, a holiday that was very important to her, family being very important to her. And she's in a facility with strangers. And I remember my mother crying and me sitting on the phone with my mother crying and my siblings coming in. They were in Jersey, I'm in Georgia. So when they came in, I rang off. That's the last time I had a conversation with my mother. And then fast forward to January when I went to New Jersey, and now she's in a different state. So it has inspired me to want to be present to those who are in this in between state. We all have the same beginning, we have the same ending, and our in between is what's unique. And so I have the honor to sit with those who are not only actively transitioning, but those of us who are in the in between, because we all deal with different stages of um, dying and transitioning differently. But I've noticed that in sitting is the commonality for me, that in the sitting and being still and listening, that I'm able to be present and to help in a way that's unique for those people. And so sitting with my mother at the end kind of was my practice, that I can't do anything at this point. She's definitely going. There's nothing that I can do that's going to stop that. How can I comfort my mother who's in and out of what we would see as consciousness? Is I could sit with her. I could hold her hand. I can lay with her. I can acknowledge when she says whatever she says. And I could feel the calm place that my mother was able to enter into. And although she didn't have maybe the ending that I thought that she should have, I want to believe that it was comforting to her for me to be able to sit with her. And to Amanda's point, that I have to sit with myself, like to be able to carry forward in my relationship with others that which I do with myself, to always be present to what is. And there were a lot of unanswered questions that I had with my mother as to how did this happen? Why wasn't I made aware of it? You know, why are they treating her this way? Why didn't my siblings advocate harder for her, knowing the kind of mother that we had? But then I just came to the place where it is what it is. And here is my opportunity to catapult from this experience that I've had with my own mother and my caring for others who are dying, others who are in the in between, and caring for myself as well. And so, although my platform may be a little different from Amanda's, I find myself in rooms 24 hours at a time, sometimes sitting at the end of the life with someone. Maybe they don't have any loved ones to sit with them, and I'm able to sit in that tension and be here with them present in this world as they are transitioning to the other. I like to look at it because I've had the experience of being a birth doula as well as a death doula, that it's preparation either way you look. You know, you prepare for a baby coming in, there's preparation on the other side going out as well. And so I have found in my years of experience in dealing with this process, life process, that there's a preparing, and that I get to help those prepare who are going, as well as those who are here to deal with the new normal with the person physically being gone. And so, in my role as a doula, I feel that I have a responsibility to not only advocate for the person who is experiencing the transition, but as well as the people who are loved ones of the one who are experiencing the transition, and also to try to bring a commonality where we can meet. And for me, breath is where it is. Like, we all have this breath, and no matter where we find ourselves advocating, sitting, listening, caring, breath is our commonality. And so I just want to always find ways to bring us back to that and be present to whatever is happening in the moment. Um,
Yeah, I love that, what you were saying about being present. One of the things that, when I'm training, and I've loved hearing your work, and I know how blessed people are to have you as their guide in this, because it's sacred work. It's the most sacred work we can do. And when I explain this, suddenly, because the status of a carer, whether they're professional or family, is low, low status. It's not, and as I said, one of my missions is to make sure that the understanding of treasuring and to be able to sit with somebody in that stillness. And I do say, sometimes I'm working with people who are terrified. Young carers are terrified. They've never seen a dead body. They don't want to be there at the end. And there's no provision made for, in normal circumstances with trainings, other than what I'm doing. And I'm very blessed to have a very good reputation in the UK for this. But I've pioneered this, really, and I'm just a daughter. I'm not a trained nurse. I'm not these other things, but I am very good at recognizing where love and care is absent. And I'm very good at recognizing when it has filled the room. And when I give the examples to the young carers that maybe I'm teaching, they can feel it. And it isn't really something you can do through a Zoom camera necessarily. You can a little bit, but it's that moment. So one of the exercises I have everyone to do is to sit with one of the carers, sits in a chair, and the doctor or the nurse, whoever I'm working with, to just stand behind them with the hands on the shoulders if you've had permission. And just gently just be. And then there's nothing to fix, do, say, care about, worry about. For that moment, all you're doing is being you with another person, just being them. And when you give someone the freedom to just be themselves, and you give yourself the freedom to just be yourself in that sacred alignment of being together, which is exactly what the vigiling is, being together, holding that grace. And just for this one moment, maybe we could just close our eyes. And those of you that are watching, just close your eyes and place your hand over your heart. And just to feel, I do this through song, and just absorb this song for yourself and your loved ones. Coming into sacred space. By the grace of your grace, you have made this a sacred place. By the grace of your grace, you have. By the grace of your grace, you have made this a sacred space. By the grace of your grace, you have. Oh, thank you, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you, oh, thank you. By the grace of your grace, you are. And take a beautiful deep breath into your heart. And imagine opening a trap door at the back of your heart where you can any grief or sadness. And in this thickening, in this stillness, in this heart opening, in this trusting, safe space place, one of the things that I like to do with those that I'm working with who are dying is, and this is something that all of you can care for yourself and for others, applies for both, is very often we leave our physical body out of the equation until it's dying. And then when it's dying, sometimes we might not like the smell of it, we might not like the look of it, we might not like the feel of it, we might be hating our bodies. And so a really simple thing to do is this, which I'm going to ask you to do, which I would do with someone that is passing, and I teach others, is I would maybe take their hands, and maybe you could take your own hand in yours. And I'd like you to just, and use your own language, that is absolutely fine. I like the word bless. It feels nice to say. But I would say, bless these beautiful hands, your beautiful hands. And I would hold them and stroke them and touch them and say, bless these hands that have given so much in your life, that have cherished your children, stroked your pets, that have allowed you to cook, to plant seeds in your garden, to paint, to touch nature, to hold, to caress, to release. Bless these incredible, beautiful hands. And then I might go down to the feet, and I would hold the feet very gently, if allowed, Bless these beautiful feet that have given you so much in your life, that have allowed you to run and dance and jump and paddle in the streams and the oceans and feel the cool grass underneath, that have given you the freedom to see your loved ones, that have allowed you to travel, that have made you strong. These gorgeous, beautiful, incredible feet. Bless these beautiful feet. And then I would go up maybe to the head, and again, being sensitive, but you could either place your hands there or just think of your own mind right now. Bless your beautiful mind, your mind that has learned so much, shared so much, taught so much, absorbed so much, read so much. This mind that has shared knowledge to young and old, to the world. This incredible mind that has received so much information, beauty, solutions that has been found by your incredible mind. The mind that has found all that is in front of it, all that needs to be finding answers to. Your incredible mind that has worked so hard. Bless this beautiful, incredible mind. And then I would go to the heart. Bless your beautiful heart. This heart that has felt so much, loved so much, hurt so much, grieved so much, received so much. This heart that has known joy and pain. This heart that has beat for others with the love of family, with the love of lovers. This heart that is full, this heart that is real, this heart that is true, this heart that is always, always going to be remembered and cherished and loved for the love it has cherished and shared. Bless this beautiful heart. And when you allow yourself to just receive that for yourself, and then, receive that on behalf of others, it's a beautiful way to cherish the understanding of your life up to this point. And it's a beautiful way to acknowledge the vehicle that we've had. And if you like, at that point of dying, we, depending on your beliefs, but I would say that, we are letting that part of our body go. So we are letting our body go with love. And that is one of our greatest gifts, to give and receive love. So Marie, I don't know if you want to say.
Sorry. I know this is a conversation between the two of you, but I have a lot to say as well, if you don't mind, because I've been in your place. And when you both were speaking, how you started on this path of caring for the dying and also for ourselves, which is like, intertwined. I was thinking of my own story, even though that wasn't my intention to bring this in here. So my mother was diagnosed with glioblastoma at the age of 55 and died a year and a half later. And we speak about caring for the dying and caring for ourselves. So if I think back, I was living in New York, I was pregnant, and my mother was in Europe, where I have 3 siblings. And my husband is a physician, so that's another aspect I like to bring in there. And my older daughter both of them want to study medicine, but I bring in my older daughter with some examples. I agree, it's so important to care for the dying and for ourselves. And if I think back of my own story, I think the biggest hurdle was not to know how, being afraid of losing, a person that is so dear to you. And at the end of the day, you do have to take off the medical part. And I think it's not only that, it's one thing, you do have to take care of this. And I was pregnant. I was flying back and forth from New York to Europe every 4 weeks, whatever. And it was very hard. And the other thing is, you have mothers. Having had a mother, I think there was also a lack of communication, because all of us kind of escaped the inevitable. So my mother, being my mother, so 3 siblings, I think she wanted to protect us and we wanted to protect her. So there was no open communication. So the caring ended up the caring you just said is not the caring they actually need, neither the dying nor us. But it was really difficult to cross this. So I think coming from this place, this is what we all need support with and learn. And the other part now, and I'm just throwing this in here now, having a physician and having a daughter. So let's take my 21-year-old daughter who is in pre-med. I give you some examples. And my husband, he guides her, and not probably from the perspective you would necessarily agree with, but it's this perspective of self-protection. When my daughter, for the first time, she's 21, she just finished her 3rd year of university, and she's not even supposed to do this, but she works in a hospital. She saw 3 young kids sitting outside a hospital room crying, and they were between, my kids are 17 and 21, almost 18 and 22. And she said, Mommy, they were our age. And so even weeks later, when she came back to Boston, when she came to New York, she had tears in her, she called me back then. And also when she was here weeks later, she had tears in her eyes. She said, Mommy, they were our age. Their mother was dying. And it brings me tears. And she was falling apart. She was just falling apart. And then she had another trauma experience. So she was working, she's working in the ER currently, where they brought in someone who killed herself, a medical student who was just supposed to start her residency. My daughter, being 21, was doing compressions on her. And she had, and then, I mean, they all understood, and that's not relevant now, but that she wasn't supposed to be there because she's only 21. But someone attached a story to that young woman who's maybe 3-4 years older than her. And she had a panic attack. And I know these stories, many of these stories from my husband as well. And I think from a physician's part, I absolutely agree. We have to care for the dying. And I will come to the second, to the other thing I wanted to mention. But as a physician, you have to protect yourself in order not to fall apart in this, what you daily experience. And that's why I give my 21. You have to build. And I'm sure it has to, I'm not sure, I know it has to somehow be differently. So I would, coming from a family with I don't know how many physicians, they would not be in their profession if it wouldn't have been their intention to help and save lives. And that's how my daughter at the end, also with this girl who shot herself, and she said, Mommy, if I can just save one life, it's worth it to do what I'm doing. And I admire her for that. And she has gotten better. But I think it's a form of self-protection that us as patients gives us a sense they don't care. And I don't think that's, and at least speaking from my personal environment, that is true. But I think that we certainly, and coming back to Amanda, what you said, why do we care more for the young than for the age? You're right. It's because it's not only young. I think something comes in there that it's probably easier from a physician's perspective to comfort parents because because the parents communicate with their child. It's not the physician communicates with the parent. While with the elderly, you're right. We kind of accept already the path, right? And I don't. Again, and you're right. It absolutely has to. The care, both of you, the care has to change. But I wonder if from a physician's perspective, with all the amount of stress they have to deal with what they have day in, day out, if they even have the capacity to do that. And not only that, the healthcare system doesn't allow to do that, right? It's especially in this country, it's corporate, it's corporate. I mean, you get criticized if you don't see enough patients, per hour. So I think it's very complex. And again, so I like to bring in these two aspects of, we don't learn how to deal with death. And for me, when you also spoke about the fear of dead body, that's not only that. When I saw my mother dead, I realized the pain she went through, because suddenly I realized she was in peace. And sadly, I wasn't there. The weirdest thing is I dreamt about her. So I had a black cloud it's the weirdest thing ever. I had a black cloud. I don't even remember the dream, but a black cloud passed in my dream. And at that very moment, my husband wakes me up and told me it was 3 o'clock at night that my mother passed, and so and the irony is, and I'm sure you have something to say about that, the irony in all of this is I was leaving. I had a ticket for the next day. So she passed like, a few hours before I was about to arrive. But anyhow, I like to give this back to you. I just wanted to throw these in order to, how can we help those who are in this situation, who face this pain? Again, maybe from the physician's side, how can they, create a caring environment? Because I know they do. Again, I know they do care. They wouldn't do what they are doing, but it's a self-protection. And how, as those who are in an environment of family, have someone who is passing. So personally, for me, it's not the dead body. It's the fear. It's the fear of death. It's the lack of open communication about that, right? So I like to hear you. I'm sorry, I just take so much time, but you're speaking both to my heart, and I like to hear you.
For me, I get complimented a lot from the nurses, more so, because I'm able to sit in that room. To your point, they have so many patients they have to see. They would love to sit and hold hands and be in rooms. And then from the loved ones, sometimes it's hard to see, right? So for me, I have the opportunity to bridge my way of seeing it. And sometimes that window is 3 days, sometimes that window is 3 hours, but to be able to bring it into that we all come into this physical dimension, we all exit this physical dimension, whatever our beliefs are, we can all agree that we're born and we die. What won't end is that thread that bridges it. And so I get to bridge that with the person who's in that bed because they can feel me over there with them. But I also get to have the loved one see that this is the process that their loved one is going through. We all go that way. And so I can comfort what the experiences that we're having in this physical dimension by also reminding that this is part of that cycle. And so sometimes the people are able to bridge that, and there's a little bit of a celebration at the end. Of course, there's the loss, but it's like nothing's missing. Like we're just in different phases of this cycle. And nurses often ask me, how are you able to do this without seeming like it touches you? Is because I know that what I'm sitting with doesn't die. And so, but I also am aware that we're in two realities here. And so I approach it more from a spiritual perspective because that's my lane. But I also see that in the work that I do, that the medical field and the physical relationships, they're able to meet in the middle. So that for me, it's an opportunity to remind us that we all come this way and we all go that way. Yeah.
And that's so beautiful, Diane, because again, you give such an example, and of course we can't be all things to all people. So we need death doulas, we need soul midwives, we need people who can do that part because that is their lane. And that's important too. However, what I teach around this, to your point about you can detach, you can protect yourself to such a point that you've actually barricaded yourself in. So to protect yourself from the thought of any pain, when I work about compassion fatigue and the trauma of that, when you witness trauma daily, like your beautiful daughter, and having to go straight into those things without being taught at the same time how to discharge the shock, how to release it. So one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is, and I'm just developing online facilities, because all of my work has been in the old-fashioned way, in training packs and DVDs and all of that, because I've been doing it for such a long time. But on the digital aspect, I will be taking people through ways to protect themselves without losing heart. And I want you to hear that again: ways to protect yourself without losing heart. So a lot of people in the medical profession think, yes, we need to be protected and distant. And I would say, if you open your heart and let trauma through, it is less painful than to be behind a glass wall. Because what happens is many people walk around and they're good at this. I'm protected, I'm doing my job, I'm medicalized, I'm doing tasks, and that's good. But what happens is that there becomes a strange not interdependence at all, a power over sometimes. Doctors and nurses, sometimes in their wanting to protect themselves, the language of communication becomes superior, or it becomes too medicalized rather than perhaps opened up, so it becomes humanized. You can still say the medical aspects, but you can still be humanized with it. So for the doctors and nurses, I teach them techniques. One of the techniques is, and these things work very quickly because you only have like a minute when you go to the toilet to do something. I know how rushed off the feet they are. You know, I've been a carer and worked in the most challenging homes with those with dementia. I turn around care homes that are in the worst cases of abuse. I get called in. So I do both. I'm shop floor. I'm in it with them, as well as outside training too. So a simple thing is to be able to wash your hands and say, what's mine is mine, and what's theirs is theirs. What's mine is mine. What's mine, what's my reality is my reality, and what's theirs is theirs. And by making a physical act of doing this, using water, which has got many other significant properties, depending again on your beliefs, I would have a bowl of salt water and use salt as well for that cleansing aspect. And then again, for protection before going into work. So if I'm working in a dementia unit, for example, and as a single mom, I wanted to make sure that my son had mum come back, not me coming home with everybody else's thoughts, feelings, screamings, anxieties. So what I would do, and this again isn't going to fit for everyone, but I would imagine that I've got a beautiful cloak. For me, it would be blue, or a lovely blue cloak with a hood all the way down to the floor. And if I'm going into a setting, particularly where it's very violent, and there's lots of, think about everyone that works in those capacities where people are shouting out and crying, I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. You're hearing those kind of repetitive inner trauma of someone else. You're sitting in a soup of unexpressed or unmet needs. Sometimes. But this protection of this cloak means that everybody's thoughts, feelings, whatever they are shouting, saying, whatever it means, whether it's positive or negative, it just goes on that cloak. And when I get home, I literally physically kind of take it off, hang it up and ask for it to be cleansed overnight. And then I step in with myself, not skin deep or beyond the skin. So finding the power of mental visualization can be really, really helpful. Having a good stomp on the earth as well when you get home to your garden and literally shaking off into Mother Earth is another good way. Another way is to acknowledge when you have done something wrong and recognize, forgive yourself in that moment, and think, God willing, that you have another day to do the work again with perhaps more kindness and patience. But when I work with people, I show them the ways you can do both together. I can ask you very quickly, and it takes 2 seconds to make someone feel seen and heard. I can say, how are you? Or I can say, how are you?
It's interesting that you say that, Amanda.
Yeah.
Now I'm coming with another personal story in here, because the question, how are you, is not necessarily, and this is my experience. My father died of a lung disease, and he also was same situation, right? There was no open communication. Everyone knew he was dying, but there was no open communication about that. And I asked him this question, how are you? And he got really upset at me and said, and I was thinking about it, and he said, how do you think I am? So I had it as an invitation to open a conversation but it was the wrong type of question in his context, because he's right. How can he possibly be right? He's dying. So, it's very, there are so many.
You would never ask that question to someone that is dying. I wouldn't be
So
asking.
okay. You
No,
see,
I would never.
okay. So you
never
would do
say
this
that.
to the patient. You see,
This is
no,
just
thank you for
as an
saying that, because
example.
I just thought you made it to everyone, because I was
No,
like,
no.
listen, it was many years ago, and I'm like, how silly of me. I knew how it was wrong, but I don't have, I mean, yes, my mother passed before, but I didn't have in that sense the experience. And that's why both of your work is so important, for no matter at which end you are, whether a physician or someone being a family member of someone who is dying, both need guidance. And I would have needed, now I know I should have never asked a question like that. But back then I wasn't thinking. I only had it as a kind of, maybe we can talk. And I was like, but I was right. The inexperience.
We don't know, and that's okay, because hopefully now, in our trainings as from a young age at school, I'm trying to create the National Care Service. We create people to go to war, but we don't teach people how to care. So
Yeah.
I think it would be good if everyone did 6 months of caring for someone. And when I do this in the media in the UK, people are like, "Oh, you can't DBS checks. There's this and this and problems and stuff." And I'm going, it is still going to happen, because the understanding of the dialogues, and if, as I said, if you get a question like that, of course it's very hard, but it's a natural question. It's a natural question on some level to a loved one to say, how are you today? But to reframe it is there anything you want to share about what you're feeling?
Now I know, but back then I was like, I can't even, I mean, now, I mean, and again, this is an example, right, where I feel guilty because my dad obviously passed, and I'm like, how could I have asked that question without thinking that this was the wrong way of phrasing this, right? Since I knew the situation. But let's listen to Amory again, because I'm sorry, we have to wrap up here, which wasn't even my intention. I'm so sorry about that. I could go on and on. So Amory, would you like to, and we also want to talk about women and healing. And
very complete. Like, I'm complete. I have nothing else to say, other than, because like I said, it takes all of us, and it takes all of us in our lanes to do this work, this caring for the dying and caring for ourselves. And my lane is breath work, because I have found in almost 2 decades that when you focus on your breath and you focus on your present situation, a lot of things become clear. Some things that you're worried about at the moment, you realize, you know what, that can wait. And so that has been my technique, to focus on the breath, to focus on the breath of the one who's transitioning, as well as those who are in the room with me and myself, and to kind of be the guide on both sides of that. And that works for me. And it works for those who can bring themselves to it. But like to Amanda's point, one thing doesn't work for everyone. I know that if you're able to commit yourself to it, that it can help. But I also know that sometimes, like in the last case I just sat with, this woman had depended on her husband for 50 years of her life. He was her driver. She was just in a place, I don't even know if I'm coming or going. So I held the space for her. That the space that she couldn't sit in, I sat for her. So I know that I'm called to this work, and how I can help people as far as the breath is concerned. I will continue to do that, and support others in their way of caring for the dying and ourselves.
And darling, can I ask you to share, you before we went on air, you were so amazing with just one moment of, because that you're so connected with breath. Could you share a breathing moment with us now? Would that be relevant for you to do that?
Sure. I
love
like
to.
there's a breath they call the square breath. I like to call it the 4-direction breath, because each time we take a breath, we could just think about the 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. And then we will have a moment where we sit at the end. And if you just pause for a moment before you take a breath in, just sit without taking a breath, because this will give us the demonstration of what it is to have this, like the breath state, as well as the breathless state. Okay? And I will guide us through it.
Beautiful.
So if you want to close your eyes and just take a breath out, deep breath in, hold, full breath out, and rest. Deep breath in, hold, full breath out, and rest. Deep breath in, hold, full breath out, and rest. Deep breath in, full breath out, and rest. There's a chant that I do in rooms, and it's Ia Oye. Ia says, I am that I am. Oye says, I am listening. And it goes like this. Ia Oye. 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 And we're complete.
Thank you. Oh, that was so beautiful.
And I sing everyone home. Everyone gets sung home.
Because we know we need that singing home is beyond precious. And I think the release of fear in what you demonstrated with the breath and that sacred connection which we can feel. And this gift doesn't involve any medical drugs. It just involves that beautiful presence and love and peace. Yeah, thank you, darling. Thank you. And Birgit as well. Thank you. don't even want to break it. But this, everyone can feel this. This is that, the sacred presence.
Thank you so much to both of you.
Yeah. Hopefully you can feel what that is. Then we're all connected in that beautiful, natural way. And it's such a blessing for us all to give this and to receive this, whether we are dying or living and dying. It's a gift of unimaginable connection.
I think we just leave it here as is, despite that there's words to say, but I would love to leave it as is. I'd like to thank you both for being here. And to our audience, thank you for watching. Much love to you all. And I'm sure we will be here together again. Thank you so much.